The lawyer's voice droned through the stuffy conference room as he read Grandma Ellie's will. My siblings, Jessica and David, shifted impatiently in their leather chairs, waiting for the big reveal. Mom dabbed her eyes with the tissue, though I suspected it was more for show than genuine grief. Then came my turn. To my beloved granddaughter Sarah Mitchell, I leave the sum of $10, along with this key and a note to be opened privately. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before David burst out laughing. $10? Seriously? That's what you get for being Grandma's little pet all these years? Jessica smirked, adjusting her diamond bracelet. Well, at least it's something, though I'm not sure what you can buy with $10 these days. Maybe a coffee? What they didn't know was that the small brass key in my trembling hands was about to unlock more than just a safety deposit box. It was about to reveal why Grandma Ellie had lived in that modest house on Maple Street for 60 years, why she'd worked as a seamstress until she was 80, and why she'd always told me that the most valuable things in life are often hidden in plain sight. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about money or inheritance. It's about understanding that sometimes the people we underestimate the most are the ones who've been protecting us all along. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The funeral had been 3 days earlier, and honestly, I was still processing the fact that Grandma Ellie was gone. She'd been the constant in my life for 28 years, the one person who never made me feel like I needed to be someone else. While Jessica climbed the corporate ladder at Morrison & Associates, and David flipped houses in the expensive suburbs, I'd chosen a different path. I worked at the Book Nook, a small independent bookstore on Main Street, living in the tiny apartment above it. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And more importantly, it was real. The reading of the will took place at Henderson & Associates, the same law firm where Jessica worked, though she'd made sure everyone knew she was too important to handle family legal matters personally. The office smelled like old leather and disappointment, with heavy wooden furniture that seemed designed to make you feel small. Mr. Henderson, a man who looked like he'd been practicing law since the Civil War, had spread the documents across his massive desk like he was dealing cards. Jessica sat to my right, her manicured fingers drumming against her Hermes purse. She'd taken the morning off from her 6-figure salary to attend what she clearly expected to be a formality. David lounged in his chair with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. His real estate empire had made him wealthy by Cedar Falls standards, and he wore success like an expensive cologne that announced his presence before he entered a room. Mom sat across from us, dabbing her eyes with tissues that matched her carefully coordinated outfit. She'd always been proud of Jessica and David's achievements, introducing them at church as my daughter the lawyer and my son the businessman. I was usually just Sarah, followed by an awkward pause that everyone pretended not to notice. The bulk of Grandma Ellie's estate was modest but predictable. The house on Maple Street went to Mom, along with the furniture and most of her personal belongings. Jessica inherited Grandma's jewelry, which wasn't extensive but included a few pieces that might have sentimental value. David got her 1998 Honda Civic, which he immediately announced he'd donate to charity for the tax write-off. Then came the moment that would change everything, though none of us knew it yet. To my beloved granddaughter Sarah Mitchell, Mr. Henderson read, his voice carrying the weight of legal formality. I leave the sum of $10, along with this key and a note to be opened privately. The $10 bill was crisp and new, like she'd gone to the bank specifically to get it. The key was small and brass, old-fashioned looking, with intricate engravings that spoke of craftsmanship from another era. The note was sealed in a cream-colored envelope with my name written in Grandma's careful script. David's laughter filled the room first, sharp and cutting. $10? Seriously? That's what you get for being Grandma's little pet all these years? He slapped his knee like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I mean, I know you two were close, but damn, Sarah, $10? Jessica's reaction was more controlled but equally cutting. She examined her freshly manicured nails with studied indifference. Well, at least it's something, she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she'd perfected in law school, the one that could make you feel stupid for existing. Though I'm not sure what you can buy with $10 these days. Maybe a coffee? A used paperback? Mom looked confused more than anything else. That's unusual, she said slowly. Mother was always so thoughtful about gifts. There must be some mistake. Uncle Pete, who'd been quiet until now, chimed in with his characteristic bluntness. Maybe she finally got tired of Sarah mooching off her every week. $10 is about what those visits were worth. The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Even Mr. Henderson cracked a smile, though he tried to hide it behind his legal pad. I sat there, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks, clutching the key so tightly it left an impression in my palm. Maybe it's symbolic, Jessica said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Like, here's $10, now go make something of yourself. Bootstrap time, little sister. David nodded sagely. Could be good for her. Force her to stop living in that fantasy world with her books and actually join the real world. I mean, working at a bookstore? Come on, Sarah, you're almost 30. 28, I corrected quietly, which only made them laugh harder. Oh, excuse me, 28, David said, rolling his eyes. That makes it so much better. Jessica was making partner track at 28. I'd already bought my first rental property. What have you accomplished? You can alphabetize fiction? The thing is, I'd heard variations of this conversation my entire adult life. Family dinners where Jessica would talk about her latest case while David described his newest development project. And I'd sit there feeling like I was watching a movie where I didn't have a speaking role. They'd ask me about work with the kind of polite interest you'd show a child describing their finger painting, then quickly move on to more important topics. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was holding Grandma's final gift in my hands, or maybe it was the way the key seemed to pulse with warmth against my palm. But I didn't feel the usual shame. Instead, I felt curious. There's a note, I said, interrupting David's monologue about the importance of financial planning. Oh right, the note, Jessica said, waving her hand dismissively. Probably some grandmother wisdom about the value of hard work and making your own way. Very touching, I'm sure. But as I looked down at the sealed envelope, I remembered something Grandma Ellie had told me just a few months before she passed. We'd been sitting in her kitchen, the afternoon sun streaming through the yellow curtains she'd made herself, drinking tea from the china set she only used for special occasions. Sarah, she'd said, her voice more serious than usual, people see what they expect to see. They look at this little house, at my old dresses, at the way I clip coupons, and they think they understand my story. But everyone has chapters they keep to themselves. At the time, I'd thought she was just being philosophical, the way elderly people sometimes get when they're reflecting on their lives. But now, holding the key and the note, I wondered if she'd been trying to tell me something more specific. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. If there's nothing else, I believe we can conclude the reading. Sarah, you're welcome to open your note here or take it home, whichever you prefer. I looked around the room at my family, all of them watching me with expressions ranging from amused to pitying. Jessica was already checking her phone, probably calculating how much billable time she was missing. David was jingling his car keys, eager to get back to his real estate empire. Mom was refolding her tissues, preparing for the next performance of grief. I think I'll read it at home, I said, standing up and carefully placing the key, the $10 bill, and the note in my purse. Probably for the best, David said, standing and stretching. Private moment of disappointment and all that. As we filed out of the office, I heard Jessica whisper to Mom, I hope this doesn't send her into one of her moods. Remember how she got after college when she couldn't find a real job? The October air was crisp as we stood outside the law office, the maple trees lining Oak Avenue showing off their autumn colors. It was the kind of day Grandma Ellie would have loved, when the light had that golden quality that made everything look like it was painted by an artist who specialized in nostalgia. Well, that was depressing, David announced, adjusting his expensive watch. $10. I mean, I know she was old, but come on. That's just insulting. Jessica nodded, slipping on her designer sunglasses. It's almost like she was making a point. Like, here, Sarah, this is what your life choices are worth. Maybe she was trying to motivate her, Mom suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. You know how Mother could be about tough love. I wanted to defend Grandma Ellie, to tell them that she'd never been cruel or calculating, that every conversation we'd had was filled with warmth and understanding. But I also knew that anything I said would be dismissed as the desperate rationalization of the disappointing granddaughter who'd just inherited pocket change. Instead, I said goodbye and walked the 6 blocks to my apartment, past the familiar storefronts of downtown Cedar Falls. Murphy's Diner was serving the lunch crowd, the hardware store was displaying Halloween decorations, and the Book Nook's windows showed the latest bestsellers arranged with the care I'd learned from years of trying to make books look irresistible. My apartment was small but cozy, with walls lined with bookshelves and a reading chair positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon light. It wasn't much by my family's standards, but it was mine, and it was filled with things that mattered to me. I made myself a cup of tea, settled into my chair, and carefully opened Grandma Ellie's note. The handwriting was shakier than usual, but still unmistakably hers. My dearest Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll be gone, but I want you to know that you were always my favorite, not because you needed me most, but because you understood me best. The $10 is not your inheritance, sweetheart. It's cab fare. Take it to Mr. Hartwell at First National Bank. Tell him Eleanor sent you and give him the key. He's been waiting 40 years for this moment, and so have I. Trust me, darling. Trust that sometimes the smallest gifts open the biggest doors. All my love, Grandma Ellie. I read the note 3 times, my hands trembling slightly. Mr. Hartwell? I'd never heard Grandma mention anyone by that name. And what did she mean by 40 years? The key felt heavier in my palm, like it was made of something more significant than brass. Outside my window, the afternoon was sliding toward evening, and I could hear the familiar sounds of Cedar Falls settling into its daily rhythm. Cars pulling into driveways, children being called in for dinner, the distant hum of life continuing exactly as it always had. But something had shifted, like when you're reading a book and suddenly realize that a seemingly minor character is actually crucial to the plot. I looked at the $10 bill, so crisp and new, and thought about David's laughter, Jessica's smirk, the way they'd all dismissed both the gift and me with such casual cruelty. They'd seen exactly what they expected to see, the disappointing granddaughter getting exactly what she deserved. But Grandma Ellie had taught me something about stories, about how the most important parts are often hidden between the lines. She'd shown me that patience was a virtue, that quiet people often have the most interesting thoughts, and that sometimes the best response to being underestimated is simply to prove them wrong. I folded the note carefully and placed it back in its envelope, then looked at the key again. It was old, definitely, with an intricate design that suggested it was made for something important. The weight of it felt significant, like it had been waiting decades for this moment. The smart thing would be to wait until tomorrow, to call the bank and make an appointment, to approach this mystery with the kind of careful planning that responsible adults use for important decisions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But something about Grandma's note, about the phrase, "he's been waiting 40 years for this moment," made me feel like this wasn't something that should wait. I grabbed my jacket and walked downstairs to the bookstore, where my boss, Mrs. Chen, was closing up for the day. She was a kind woman who'd given me the job when I was fresh out of college and desperate, and she'd never made me feel like working there was temporary or shameful. "Everything okay, Sarah?" she asked, noticing my expression. "How did the will reading go?" I showed her the key and the note, and she read it with the same careful attention she brought to everything. "Well," she said finally, "that's certainly intriguing. Are you going to the bank?" "I think I have to," I said. "Something about this feels important." She nodded. Sometimes the most interesting stories start with the smallest details. Take your time and let me know if you need anything. The walk to First National Bank took about 10 minutes, past the courthouse and the small park where Grandma Ellie used to take me to feed the ducks when I was little. The bank was a solid brick building that had anchored the corner of Commerce and Main for as long as anyone could remember, the kind of institution that seemed immune to the changes that had transformed the rest of downtown. I pushed through the heavy glass doors into the lobby, where the marble floors and dark wood paneling created an atmosphere of quiet authority. A few customers were finishing their business at the teller windows, but the bank had that end-of-day feeling, like everyone was ready to go home and start their evening routines. The receptionist, a woman about my age with kind eyes and a name tag that read Jennifer, looked up as I approached. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Mr. Hartwell," I said, suddenly feeling foolish. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. My grandmother was Eleanor Mitchell, and she left me this key." She said to tell him Eleanor sent me. Jennifer's expression changed immediately, like I'd just said a magic word. "Oh my," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Just one moment, please." She picked up her phone and spoke quietly into it, then looked back at me with something approaching awe. "Mr. Hartwell will be right with you. Please, have a seat." I sat in one of the leather chairs near the window, watching the last customers of the day conduct their business. The $10 bill was still in my purse, along with the key and the note, and I found myself wondering what Grandma Ellie had been thinking when she'd planned this moment. Had she known how my family would react? Had she anticipated their laughter and dismissal? "Miss Mitchell?" I looked up to see a distinguished man in his 70s, with silver hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He was wearing a perfectly pressed suit, but there was something warm about his expression that made me feel immediately at ease. "I'm Richard Hartwell," he said, extending his hand. "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." Mr. Hartwell's handshake was firm, but his eyes held a depth of emotion that caught me off guard. He studied my face for a long moment, like he was searching for something familiar. "You have her eyes," he said finally. "Eleanor's eyes. Same intelligence, same kindness. She talked about you constantly, you know. Every time she came in, which was every month for 40 years, she'd tell me about something you'd done or said. She was so proud of you." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "She came here every month?" "Without fail. First Monday of every month, 9:30 sharp. She'd make a deposit, check on her accounts, and we'd chat for a few minutes. She always asked about my wife, my children, my grandchildren. Eleanor had that gift, you know? She made everyone feel like they mattered." This was confusing. Grandma Ellie had lived simply, clipping coupons and shopping at thrift stores. What kind of deposits could she have been making? And accounts, plural? I'd assumed she had a basic checking account, maybe a small savings account for emergencies. "Mr. Hartwell," I said, pulling out the key. "She left me this, along with a note saying you'd been waiting 40 years for this moment." His expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Indeed I have. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Miss Mitchell. Far more remarkable than anyone in your family ever realized. She made me promise to wait until after she was gone to open that box. She said it was the only way to protect what she'd built." "What she'd built?" He gestured toward the back of the bank. "Come with me. There are some things you need to see before we go to the vault." We walked through the main banking floor, past the teller windows and customer service desks, to a corridor I'd never noticed before. The walls were lined with portraits of the bank's presidents, dating back to its founding in 1952. Mr. Hartwell stopped in front of one particular portrait, a stern-looking man in his 50s with intelligent eyes. "That's my father, William Hartwell. He was president of this bank for 32 years. He's the one who first met your grandmother, back in 1984. She was 37 years old, recently widowed, with 3 young children to support. 1984. That would have been right after my grandfather died, when my mom was still in high school and my aunts and uncles were just starting their adult lives. I'd always known that Grandma Ellie had struggled financially after becoming a widow, but the family narrative was that she'd somehow managed to scrape by on her seamstress work and Social Security. She came in with $50, Mr. Hartwell continued, wanting to open a savings account. $50 was significant money for her then. She was working 3 jobs, seamstress work during the day, cleaning offices at night, and weekend alterations at the dry cleaner. My father was impressed by her determination. We continued down the corridor to his office, a spacious room with windows overlooking the town square. The walls were lined with financial certificates and community awards, but what caught my attention was a small framed photograph on his desk, a picture of him and Grandma Ellie, both much younger, standing in front of the bank. That was taken in 1990, he said, noticing my interest, the day she made her first major deposit. She'd been saving every penny for 6 years, living on almost nothing, putting every extra dollar into her account. She had a plan, you see. She was going to invest in the stock market. Grandma Ellie invested in stocks? This was getting more surreal by the minute. The woman who taught me to darn socks and grow vegetables to save money had been playing the stock market? Not just invested, Mr. Hartwell said, settling behind his desk and pulling out a thick file folder. She was brilliant at it. My father started as her advisor, but within a few years she was making her own decisions. She had this intuition about companies, about which ones would succeed and which ones wouldn't. She bought Microsoft in 1986, Apple in 1997, Google in 2004. She called it her, quote, future fund. I sat down hard in the chair across from his desk. But she lived like she had no money. She shopped at thrift stores, drove that old Honda, clipped coupons religiously. That was the point, he said gently. She never wanted anyone to know. She'd seen what money could do to families, how it could change people. She watched wealthy families in town tear themselves apart over inheritance disputes. She was determined that wouldn't happen to her children. He opened the file folder, revealing decades of financial statements, stock certificates, and investment records. The numbers were staggering. Page after page of steady growth, smart investments, and compound interest working its magic over 40 years. She also had a real estate portfolio, he continued. Nothing flashy, small rental properties in college towns, commercial buildings in growing areas. She bought them cash, fixed them up herself, and rented them out. She was incredibly handy, you know. She could tile a bathroom, install plumbing, even do basic electrical work. This was a side of Grandma Ellie I'd never seen. I'd known she was practical and resourceful, but I'd had no idea she was essentially running a real estate empire from her little house on Maple Street. Why didn't she tell anyone? I asked. Mr. Hartwell leaned back in his chair. She tried, once. This was about 15 years ago. Your mother was going through her divorce, struggling financially. Eleanor offered to help, to pay for your mother's lawyer, maybe help with a down payment on a house. But Carol was so proud, so embarrassed about needing help. She said she didn't want charity, that she'd figure it out herself. I remembered that time. Mom had been stressed and exhausted, working 2 jobs to make ends meet after the divorce. She'd been so determined to prove she could handle everything alone that she'd barely accepted help with babysitting, let alone money. What happened? Eleanor backed off. She realized that her children needed to find their own way, that giving them money might actually hurt them in the long run. But she also realized that she needed to be more careful about who she trusted with her secret. He pulled out another document, this one more recent. She updated her will every few years, but the last version was written just 3 months ago. She was very specific about how she wanted things handled. The $10, I said suddenly. That wasn't really my inheritance, was it? Mr. Hartwell smiled. The $10 was symbolic. Eleanor had a sense of humor about these things. She knew exactly how your family would react to it. She wanted to see who would mock you and who would support you. She wanted to know who deserved to know the truth. And the key? The key opens a safety deposit box that contains the real inheritance. But more than that, it contains her real story. The story she never got to tell while she was alive. I thought about the will reading, about David's laughter and Jessica's smirk, about the way they'd all dismissed both the gift and me with such casual cruelty. Had Grandma Ellie known they would react that way? Had she planned for their mockery? She protected you, Mr. Hartwell said quietly. All those years, all those family dinners where your siblings talked about their success and made you feel small. She was building something for you. She saw your kindness, your intelligence, your integrity. She knew you were the only one who would use her gift responsibly. But why me? I asked. Why not divide it equally among all of us? He was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out a handwritten letter from the file. She wrote this for you. She wanted me to give it to you before we opened the vault. The letter was in Grandma Ellie's careful handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before she died. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you found your way to Richard, just as I knew you would. I need you to understand why I chose you, why I kept this secret for so long, and why I'm trusting you with everything I've built. From the time you were small, you were different from your siblings. Not better or worse, but different. Jessica and David were driven by ambition and status, which isn't wrong, but it wasn't what I needed for this responsibility. You were driven by curiosity and compassion. You asked questions not to show off, but because you genuinely wanted to understand. I watched you choose books over parties, choose meaningful work over high-paying jobs, choose authenticity over approval. I watched your family dismiss these choices, and I watched you stay true to yourself anyway. That's courage, sweetheart. That's character. The money I'm leaving you isn't just money. It's 40 years of believing in the future, of betting on progress and growth and human potential. It's the result of living below my means so I could invest in tomorrow. But more than that, it's my vote of confidence in you. I know you'll use it wisely. I know you'll help people, create something meaningful, make the world a little better. That's who you are, and that's why I chose you. Don't let them make you feel guilty about this. Don't let them convince you that you don't deserve it. You do deserve it, not because you're my favorite, but because you're the one who will honor what it represents. All my love, Grandma Ellie. I was crying by the time I finished reading. Mr. Hartwell handed me a tissue and waited quietly while I composed myself. She loved all of you, he said gently. But she knew you were the one who would understand the real value of what she'd built. Not just the money, but the philosophy behind it. The patience, the planning, the long-term thinking. How much are we talking about? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Mr. Hartwell consulted his computer screen. As of yesterday's market close, including the real estate holdings, the stock portfolio, and the various savings accounts, the total value is approximately $12.7 million. The world tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to process what I'd just heard. $12.7 million. Grandma Ellie, who had lived in that modest house and darned her own socks, had accumulated nearly $13 million over 40 years. That's not possible, I whispered. It's not only possible, it's the result of consistent investing and compound growth over 4 decades. Your grandmother was essentially a millionaire by 1995, but she continued to live modestly and let her investments grow. She never touched the principal, only occasionally reinvested the dividends. I thought about all the times I'd worried about her finances, all the times I'd offered to help with groceries or utilities, all the times she'd accepted small gifts from me with such grace and gratitude. She'd been worth millions, but she'd let me buy her lunch and feel good about helping. She wanted you to feel needed, Mr. Hartwell said, reading my expression. She wanted you to experience the joy of giving, even when she didn't need your help. That's the kind of person she was. What about the others? My mom, Jessica, David? They're going to feel cheated. Are they? He asked. Your mother inherited the house, which is worth about $200,000. Jessica got the jewelry, which includes some pieces that are worth more than she realizes. David got the car, but he also got something else he doesn't know about yet. What? Eleanor paid off his mortgage 6 months ago, anonymously, through the bank. He thinks it was some kind of clerical error or insurance settlement. She couldn't bear to watch him struggle with those payments, especially after his divorce. So even in death, Grandma Ellie had been taking care of everyone. She'd given Jessica and David exactly what they needed. But she'd given me what I needed too, the chance to make a real difference in the world. What about the vault? I asked. Mr. Hartwell stood up. The vault contains the documents that prove everything I've just told you. Stock certificates, property deeds, bank statements, and her personal papers. But it also contains something else. Something she wanted you to have as a reminder of who she really was. We left his office and walked deeper into the bank, past areas I'd never seen before. The elevator took us down to the basement level, where the safety deposit boxes were kept. The vault door was massive, like something from a movie, but it opened easily with Mr. Hartwell's key and a combination he'd memorized decades ago. Inside, the walls were lined with hundreds of small metal boxes, each one containing someone's precious items. Mr. Hartwell led me to box number 1547, near the back of the vault. It was larger than most of the others, about the size of a small filing cabinet. She rented this box in 1984, he said. She's been adding to it ever since. I inserted the brass key with trembling fingers. It fit perfectly, and the box opened with a soft click. Inside were folders, documents, and something unexpected. A small wooden jewelry box that I recognized from Grandma Ellie's dresser. "Go ahead," Mr. Hartwell said gently. "Take your time." I opened the jewelry box first. Inside was a simple gold locket that I'd never seen before. When I opened it, I found a tiny photograph of myself at age 5, sitting in Grandma Ellie's lap while she read to me. On the other side was an inscription. "To my Sarah, who taught me that love is the only wealth that matters." The folders contained exactly what Mr. Hartwell had described: decades of financial records, property deeds, and investment statements. But there was also something else. A detailed journal that Grandma Ellie had kept throughout her investing career. Page after page of her thoughts, her research, her decisions. "I bought Microsoft today," read one entry from 1986. "Everyone thinks personal computers are just a fad. But I watch Sarah with that little computer at the library, and I can see the future. She's 7 years old, and she's already more comfortable with that machine than most adults. If children are the future, then the tools children use are the future too." Another entry from 1997. "Apple is struggling, but I'm buying more shares." I remember when Sarah was in high school. She said Apple makes computers that are beautiful, not just functional. She said someday everyone will want things that are beautiful and functional. I think she's right. Entry after entry showed that Grandma Ellie had been using me as her inspiration, watching how I interacted with technology, with books, with the world, and making investment decisions based on what she observed. She'd been building wealth by betting on the future she saw through my eyes. "She used you as her market research," Mr. Hartwell said with a smile. "She said you had an instinct for what people would want, what would make life better. She trusted your judgment more than any financial advisor." The final folder contained legal documents: the deed to the house on Maple Street, which she'd owned outright since 1988, and deeds to 17 other properties in 3 states. There were also letters from tenants, thanking her for being a fair and understanding landlord, for fixing things quickly, for never raising rent unnecessarily. But the most surprising document was a business license for Mitchell Property Management, with my name listed as the sole proprietor. It was dated 3 months ago, just after her last visit to the bank. "She set up a management company in your name," Mr. Hartwell explained. "All the properties, all the investments, they're legally yours now. She spent months working with lawyers to make sure the transition would be smooth, that you wouldn't face any tax complications or legal challenges." I was overwhelmed. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a complete business empire, built slowly and carefully over 4 decades. Grandma Ellie hadn't just left me money. She'd left me a responsibility. "There's one more thing," Mr. Hartwell said, reaching into the back of the box. He pulled out a small wrapped package. "She said to give this to you last." Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a small charm. A tiny key. There was also a note. "For Sarah, who holds all the keys to the future, use them wisely." I sat in the quiet vault, surrounded by the evidence of my grandmother's secret life, and tried to process what had just happened. This morning I'd been Sarah Mitchell, part-time bookstore employee, family disappointment, inheritor of $10. Now I was Sarah Mitchell, property manager, millionaire, guardian of a legacy I'd never known existed. "What do I do now?" I asked. Mr. Hartwell smiled. "Now you go home and think. This is a lot to absorb. But Eleanor left you something else, a letter with specific instructions about what she hoped you'd do with the money. You don't have to follow them, of course. It's your money now, but she had some ideas about how you might use it to make a difference." He handed me a sealed envelope marked, "For Sarah's eyes only. Open when ready." As we made our way back to the surface, I thought about my family, probably at home now, telling their spouses about the ridiculous will reading, about how Grandma Ellie had left me $10 like some kind of joke. They had no idea that their mockery had been part of an elaborate test, that their cruelty had actually helped determine who deserved to know the truth. Tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do with this knowledge, this responsibility, this incredible gift. But tonight, I just wanted to go home and read Grandma Ellie's final letter. to understand her vision for the future she'd spent 40 years building. Mr. Hartwell walked me to the bank's entrance. "Your grandmother was an extraordinary woman," he said. "She built something remarkable, not just financially, but ethically. She proved that you can be wealthy and still be kind, successful and still be humble. That's a rare combination." As I walked back to my apartment, the October evening settling around me, I thought about the morning's events. The will reading seemed like it had happened days ago, not just hours. The $10 bill was still in my purse, along with the key that had unlocked everything. But the real key, I realized, wasn't made of brass. It was made of patience, wisdom, and love. Grandma Ellie had given me more than money. She'd given me the chance to continue her work, to prove that quiet people could accomplish extraordinary things, and to show my family that success wasn't always loud and obvious. The hardest part would be deciding what to tell them and when. But first, I had a letter to read and a future to imagine. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw numbers, $12.7 million, spinning through my mind like a slot machine that had hit the ultimate jackpot. I'd placed Grandma Ellie's final letter on my nightstand, unopened, like a present I wasn't quite ready to unwrap. The weight of what I'd learned felt enormous, pressing down on my chest like a physical thing. By morning, I'd made my first decision. I needed to understand the full scope of what I'd inherited before I could figure out what to do with it. I called Mrs. Chen and told her I needed a few days off for family matters. She was understanding, as always, telling me to take whatever time I needed. Mr. Hartwell had given me copies of everything from the vault, along with contact information for the lawyers and accountants who'd been helping Grandma Ellie manage her affairs. The first call I made was to Margaret Chen, the estate attorney who'd been working with my grandmother for the past 5 years. "Sarah," she said warmly when I introduced myself. "I've been expecting your call. Eleanor spoke of you often. She was so proud of the woman you'd become." We arranged to meet at her office that afternoon. Margaret Chen was a small, precise woman in her 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and an office that smelled like jasmine tea and old books. She had prepared a comprehensive overview of what she called the Eleanor Mitchell portfolio. "Your grandmother was one of my most interesting clients," she said, spreading documents across her conference table. "She came to me 5 years ago with a very specific request. She wanted to ensure that her estate would be managed in a way that would honor her values while providing maximum benefit to the right person." "The right person?" "You, Sarah." She was very clear about that. She'd been watching all 3 of her grandchildren for years, studying your choices, your character, your priorities. She told me that you were the only one who shared her long-term vision. Margaret walked me through the details. The real estate portfolio consisted of 17 properties across Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Most were small apartment buildings near college campuses, purchased over the years as student housing. Grandma Ellie had researched each location carefully, buying properties in towns where universities were expanding, where student enrollment was growing steadily. She had a theory, Margaret explained, that college towns were the most stable real estate investments. Students always need housing, universities rarely close, and college towns tend to be more recession-resistant than other areas. She was right. Even during the 2008 financial crisis, her properties maintained their value. The stock portfolio was equally impressive. Grandma Ellie had been what modern investors would call a buy-and-hold investor, purchasing shares in companies she believed in and keeping them for decades. Her Microsoft shares, bought in 1986, had split multiple times and were now worth nearly $500,000. Her Apple investment, made during the company's darkest period in 1997, had grown to over $800,000. She also had a remarkable ability to spot emerging trends, Margaret continued. She bought Amazon in 1999, when most people thought it was just an online bookstore. She said her granddaughter worked at a bookstore and understood how much people loved books, so a company that could deliver any book to your door had to succeed. I remembered that conversation. I'd been complaining to Grandma Ellie about how hard it was to find certain books, how customers would come in asking for obscure titles that we'd have to special order. She'd listened carefully, asking questions about what kinds of books people wanted, how long they were willing to wait for delivery, whether they'd be willing to pay for convenience. She was using me as market research, I said, finally understanding. Exactly. She said you had an instinct for what people needed, what would make their lives better. She trusted your insights more than any financial analyst. Margaret showed me photographs of the properties. They were all well maintained, clearly cared for. I saw college students moving in and out, young families with children, elderly couples who'd found affordable housing near campus amenities. These weren't just investments. They were homes, communities, places where people built their lives. Your grandmother took her role as a landlord very seriously, Margaret said. She kept rents reasonable, responded quickly to maintenance requests, and never evicted anyone without trying to work out a solution first. She said housing was a human right, not just a business opportunity. How much income do the properties generate? Currently about $48,000 per month, after expenses and property management fees. That's roughly $576,000 annually. The stock portfolio generates another $200,000 in dividends each year. I was quiet for a long moment, trying to process these numbers. Nearly $800,000 in annual income, plus the principal value of $12.7 million. I was not just wealthy, I was rich in a way that would change my life forever. What did she want me to do with it? I asked. Margaret reached for a thick folder. She left very detailed instructions. Not requirements, mind you. She was clear that the money is yours to use as you see fit. But she had hopes, suggestions for how you might honor her legacy while building your own. The folder contained a handwritten letter dated 3 months before Grandma Ellie's death, along with detailed financial projections and what looked like a business plan. My dear Sarah, the letter began, if you're reading this, then you've learned the truth about my secret life as a capitalist. I hope you're not too shocked. I know I always preached about the virtues of simple living, and I still believe in those virtues. But I also believe in the power of money to do good when it's used thoughtfully. I've spent 40 years building this wealth, not for luxury or status, but for impact. I want you to continue that work, to use these resources to make the world a little better. Here are some ideas to consider. First, the bookstore. Mrs. Chen mentioned that she's thinking about retiring, that she's worried about what will happen to the book nook. I think you should buy it. Not just to preserve it, but to expand it. Imagine a bookstore that's also a community center, a place where people can attend lectures, take classes, meet authors. You could host literacy programs, book clubs for seniors, reading groups for children. Books change lives, sweetheart, and you could be the one facilitating those changes. Second, the properties. I've been thinking about affordable housing, about how hard it is for young people to find decent places to live. What if you use the rental income to keep rents low, to provide housing for teachers, artists, nonprofit workers, people who make our communities better but don't make much money? You could create a model for ethical property management. Third, education. I've been watching the student loan crisis, seeing how it's crushing young people before they even start their careers. What if you set up a scholarship fund? Not just for academic excellence, but for character. For students who show kindness and integrity and determination, you could help create the next generation of leaders. These are just ideas, of course. The money is yours, and I trust you to use it wisely. But I wanted you to know that my dream was always bigger than just accumulating wealth. My dream was to create something that would outlast me, something that would continue making a difference long after I was gone. I love you, sweetheart. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Now show the world what you can do. All my love, Grandma Ellie. I was crying again by the time I finished reading. Margaret handed me tissues and waited patiently while I composed myself. She really thought this through, I said finally. Eleanor was a planner. She spent months researching each of these ideas, running financial projections, consulting with experts. She even had preliminary conversations with Mrs. Chen about the bookstore purchase. Mrs. Chen knew? Not about the money, but Eleanor had asked her hypothetically what she would do if someone offered to buy the book nook with the intention of expanding it. Mrs. Chen was thrilled at the possibility. She's been worried about the future of independent bookstores, about whether her life's work would survive after her retirement. I thought about the book nook, about how it had been my refuge for the past 6 years. It was more than just a job. It was a place where I felt useful, where I could help people find exactly the book they needed, where I could share my love of literature with anyone who walked through the door. What would it cost to buy the bookstore? Margaret consulted her notes. Mrs. Chen mentioned that she'd been hoping to get about $200,000 for the business and the building. With renovations and expansion, you'd probably need to invest another $300,000 to create the kind of community space Eleanor envisioned. $500,000. 2 months ago, that would have been an impossible amount of money. Now it represented less than 4% of my inheritance. And the scholarship fund? Eleanor suggested starting with an endowment of $2 million. Properly invested, that would generate enough income to provide full scholarships for about 20 students per year, in perpetuity. I walked to the window and looked out at downtown Cedar Falls. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon in a small Midwestern town. People were going about their daily business, working at their jobs, running errands, living their lives. Most of them would never know that the quiet woman who'd lived on Maple Street for 60 years had been secretly wealthy, that she'd been watching and planning and dreaming of ways to make their community better. "There's something else," Margaret said quietly. "Eleanor was concerned about how your family would react when they learned about the inheritance. She wanted to protect you from any legal challenges or family disputes." Legal challenges? It's not uncommon for family members to contest wills when there's a significant inheritance involved. Eleanor was worried that Jessica might argue that you exerted undue influence over her, that you somehow manipulated her into leaving you the money. I felt a chill run down my spine. I could absolutely see Jessica doing that. She was a lawyer after all, and she'd been furious about the $10 inheritance even before she knew there was more money involved. But Eleanor was careful, Margaret continued. She documented everything. She had regular meetings with me, always with witnesses present. She underwent psychological evaluations to prove she was competent and acting of her own free will. She even had conversations with your family members recorded, though they didn't know it at the time. Recorded? Nothing illegal. She simply made sure that whenever she had conversations with Jessica, David, or your mother about money or inheritance, she was in a public place where recording was legal. She wanted to document their attitudes, their treatment of you, their priorities. Margaret pulled out a small digital recorder. She asked me to play this for you. It's from a conversation she had with Jessica about 6 months ago. She pressed play, and I heard Grandma Ellie's voice, slightly weaker than I remembered, but still clearly her. "Jessica, dear, I've been thinking about the future, about what will happen to the family when I'm gone." "Oh, Grandma," Jessica's voice responded, "don't talk like that. You're going to be around for years. Humor an old woman. What would you do if you inherited some money? How would you use it?" There was a pause, then Jessica's voice, bright with excitement. "Well, Tom and I have been looking at vacation homes in Florida, and I'd love to upgrade my car. Maybe get that new BMW I've been wanting. Oh, and there's this amazing spa in California that I've been dying to try. Why do you ask?" "Just curious about your priorities, dear. What about Sarah? What do you think she'd do with money?" Jessica's laugh was sharp. "Sarah? She'd probably waste it on books or some silly charity. She's never been practical about money. That's why she's still working at that bookstore instead of getting a real job." "I see. And you think she doesn't deserve to have nice things?" "It's not about deserving, Grandma. It's about being responsible. Sarah makes poor choices. She always has. If she had money, she'd just throw it away on her bleeding heart causes instead of investing it properly." Margaret stopped the recording. She had similar conversations with David and your mother. The pattern was always the same. They assumed you were impractical, that you couldn't be trusted with money, that you'd waste it on frivolous things. But she was testing them. Exactly. She wanted to see if any of them would defend you, if any of them would suggest that you might use money wisely. None of them did. I sat down heavily in the chair. The weight of what I'd learned was enormous, not just about the money, but about my family's true feelings about me. They didn't just dismiss my choices. They actively believed I was incompetent, irresponsible, unworthy of trust. "There's one more recording," Margaret said gently. "This one is different." She played another file, This time I heard Grandma Ellie talking to someone I didn't recognize at first. "She's special, you know," Grandma Ellie was saying. "Not in a way that makes headlines or wins awards, but in a way that makes the world better. She sees people, really sees them. When someone comes into that bookstore looking for something, she doesn't just sell them a book. She finds exactly what they need, even if they don't know what that is." "You're very proud of her," the other voice said. It was Mr. Hartwell, I realized. "I am. But more than that, I trust her. I trust her judgment, her heart, her priorities. She's the only one in my family who cares more about doing good than looking good. That's a rare quality." "It is, and that's why I'm leaving everything to her, not because she's my favorite, but because she's the only one who will use it the way I would want it used." Margaret turned off the recorder. She made that recording 2 weeks before she died. She wanted you to know that her decision wasn't based on sentiment or favoritism. It was based on character. I was quiet for a long time, processing everything I'd learned. The money was life-changing, but it was also a responsibility. Grandma Ellie had spent 40 years building this wealth with a specific purpose in mind. She'd trusted me to carry on that purpose, to use the money to make a difference. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you have some decisions to make. The inheritance is legally yours. The paperwork was filed yesterday and will be processed within the week. But you need to decide what to tell your family, and when." "What did Grandma Ellie want me to tell them?" Margaret smiled. "She left instructions for that too. She suggested that you wait until they've had time to show their true colors. She had a feeling that once they learned about the money, they'd reveal exactly who they really are." "You think they'll find out?" "Small towns talk, Sarah. Eventually, someone will notice that you're not working at the bookstore anymore, that you're buying property, that you're living differently. When that happens, you'll need to be prepared for their reaction." I thought about my family, about how they treated me at the will reading, about how they dismissed both me and Grandma Ellie's gift with such casual cruelty. Part of me wanted to protect them from the truth, to find a way to share the money equally, and maintain family harmony. But another part of me, the part that had listened to their mockery and felt their dismissal, wanted them to know that they'd been wrong about everything. Grandma Ellie wanted me to give them a chance to redeem themselves, didn't she? She did. She hoped that maybe, faced with the truth, they'd realize how they'd been treating you and make amends. But she also prepared for the possibility that they wouldn't change, that they'd simply be angry and resentful. Margaret handed me another folder. "These are the legal documents you'll need if anyone challenges the will." Eleanor was thorough. She protected you from every angle. As I left Margaret's office, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. The money was mine, legally and ethically. But the responsibility that came with it was enormous. I had the power to change lives, to make a real difference in my community, to honor Grandma Ellie's legacy in a meaningful way. But first, I had to figure out how to handle my family, how to navigate the inevitable discovery of the truth, how to protect myself from their anger and resentment while still trying to preserve some semblance of family relationships. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings and phone calls. I met with the accountant who'd been managing Grandma Ellie's investments, with the property manager who'd been overseeing the rental properties, with the financial advisor who'd been helping her plan for the future. Each meeting revealed new layers of complexity, new responsibilities, new opportunities. But it was the meeting with Mrs. Chen that really brought home the reality of what I could do with this money. We sat in the back room of the book nook, surrounded by boxes of books and the familiar smell of paper and ink, and I told her about my inheritance. $12.7 million, she repeated slowly. "Sarah, that's incredible. Eleanor never let on that she had that kind of money." "She lived very simply," I said. "She didn't want anyone to know." "And she left it all to you?" "She did. And she had some ideas about what I might do with it, including buying the book nook." Mrs. Chen's eyes filled with tears. She knew I was worried about retiring, about what would happen to the store. "I've been here for 35 years, Sarah. This place is my life's work." "It could continue to be your life's work," I said. "I don't want to replace you. I want to expand what you've already built. Turn it into a community center, a place where people can come for more than just books." We talked for hours about the possibilities. adult literacy programs, author readings, book clubs for seniors, story time for children. We could host lectures on local history, workshops on writing and creativity, support groups for people going through difficult times. The bookstore could become the heart of the community, a place where people connected over their shared love of learning and literature. "It's a beautiful vision," Mrs. Chen said finally. "Eleanor would be so proud." "I hope so. I want to honor what she built, to continue her work in a way that makes a difference." As I walked home that evening, I felt a sense of purpose that I'd never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I had the resources to make a real impact, to turn dreams into reality. But I also felt the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that every decision I made would affect not just me but the entire community. Tomorrow, I would have to start making those decisions. Tomorrow, I would have to figure out how to balance honoring Grandma Ellie's wishes with living my own life. Tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do about my family, about the inevitable moment when they discovered the truth. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in my small apartment, surrounded by my books, and think about the woman who'd given me the chance to change the world. Grandma Ellie had been right about so many things. She'd been right about the power of patience, about the importance of character over status, about the value of quiet generosity over loud success. Most of all, she'd been right about me. She'd seen something in me that I'd never seen in myself. The ability to make a difference, to use resources wisely, to honor a legacy while building a future. The $10 inheritance had been a test, and I'd passed. Now it was time to prove that her faith in me had been justified. The brass key sat on my nightstand, catching the light from my reading lamp. It had opened more than just a safety deposit box. It had opened a door to possibilities I'd never imagined. Tomorrow I would start walking through that door, one careful step at a time, carrying Grandma Ellie's dreams forward into a future she'd helped me create. 2 weeks had passed since my meeting with Margaret Chen, and I'd spent every day learning how to manage my new responsibilities. The property manager, Robert Hayes, had walked me through each rental property, introducing me to tenants and explaining the maintenance schedules. The financial advisor, Patricia Stone, had helped me understand the investment portfolio and set up systems for managing the quarterly dividends. I'd even started preliminary discussions with architects about renovating the book nook. But through it all, I'd been dreading the inevitable moment when my family would discover the truth. That moment came on a Thursday morning when David called me, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Sarah, we need to talk, now." "Good morning to you too, David." "What's wrong?" "Don't play dumb. I just got off the phone with Jim Peterson at the bank. He mentioned congratulating me on my mortgage being paid off, said it was generous of the family to take care of it anonymously. At first I thought he was confused, but then he mentioned something about the Mitchell property management account handling the payment. My heart sank. I'd known this day would come, but I'd hoped for more time to prepare. "Where are you?" David continued. "We're all meeting at Mom's house in an hour. Jessica's driving up from Des Moines." "And Sarah? You better have some explanations." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, knowing that the peaceful quiet of the past 2 weeks was about to explode into chaos. I'd been naive to think I could keep the inheritance secret indefinitely. In a town like Cedar Falls, financial information had a way of spreading, especially when it involved amounts large enough to pay off mortgages. I drove to Mom's house with my stomach in knots. The modest ranch-style home on Elm Street looked exactly the same as it had during my childhood, with the same manicured lawn and the same ceramic gnomes that Mom had collected over the years. But everything felt different now. I wasn't arriving as the family disappointment anymore. I was arriving as the keeper of secrets that would change everything. Jessica's silver Mercedes was already in the driveway, parked next to David's black SUV. I could see them through the living room window, animated in conversation, their gestures sharp with frustration. Mom was pacing, which she only did when she was extremely upset. I took a deep breath and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, David yanked it open, his face flushed with anger. "Finally," he said. "Get in here." The living room felt smaller than I remembered, crowded with tension and accusations that hadn't been voiced yet. Jessica was sitting on the edge of the sofa, her laptop open, papers spread across the coffee table. Mom was standing by the window, wringing her hands. Uncle Pete was there too, looking uncomfortable but curious. "Sit down, Sarah," Mom said, her voice strained. "We need to understand what's going on." I remained standing. "What do you think is going on?" "Don't," Jessica said sharply, looking up from her laptop. "Don't you dare play innocent with us. I've been doing research for the past 2 hours. Mitchell Property Management is a real company, registered in Iowa, with significant assets. The sole proprietor is listed as Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell." "That's you." "Yes, it is. And this company," David said, his voice rising, "somehow had enough money to pay off my $200,000 mortgage without me knowing about it." "How does that work, Sarah? How does someone who works part-time at a bookstore suddenly have that kind of money?" I looked around the room at their faces. Jessica's was sharp with legal-minded suspicion. David's was red with indignation. Mom's was confused and hurt. Uncle Pete just looked stunned. "Grandma Ellie left me more than $10, I said quietly. "How much more?" Jessica demanded. "Significantly more." "Don't be evasive," she snapped. "I'm a lawyer, Sarah. I know how to ask questions." "How much money did our grandmother leave you?" I sat down in the chair across from them, the same chair I'd occupied during countless family gatherings where I'd felt like an outsider. But this time, I felt different. Calmer. More grounded. "She left me her entire estate. The house went to Mom, the jewelry went to you, Jessica, and the car went to David. But everything else, the investments, the properties, the savings, all of that came to me." The silence lasted exactly 5 seconds before the explosion. "That's impossible," David said. "Grandma didn't have any money. She lived like she was poor." "She clipped coupons," Mom added, as if that proved something. "She bought her clothes at garage sales. She drove that old Honda for 15 years. She did all of those things," I agreed. "But she also invested every penny she saved. For 40 years. Jessica was typing furiously on her laptop. "I'm looking at property records right now, Sarah. There are 17 properties listed under Mitchell Property Management. 17. In 3 different states. The assessed value of these properties is..." She paused, calculating. "Over $6 million. The total inheritance is about $12.7 million, I said. "The properties are just part of it." Uncle Pete made a choking sound. Mom sat down heavily on the couch. David's face had gone from red to white. $12.7 million. Jessica repeated slowly. "Our grandmother, who we thought was scraping by on Social Security, left you nearly $13 million. "Yes. And you didn't think to mention this to your family?" "I'm mentioning it now." 2 weeks later," David exploded. "You've known about this for 2 weeks and didn't say anything? Do you have any idea what that money could mean to this family?" "I know exactly what it means," I said calmly. "That's why I needed time to process it." Jessica leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "This doesn't make sense. Why would she leave everything to you? You're the youngest, you don't have a family to support, you don't even have a real career. David has 2 kids in college. I have a mortgage and student loans. Mom's retirement savings are minimal. It's not fair." "Fair according to whom?" "According to common sense," she said. "According to normal family dynamics. According to the fact that we've all been more successful than you, more responsible than you." "Have you?" "Of course we have. Look at our lives, Sarah. Look at what we've accomplished. I'm a partner at a major law firm. David owns a successful real estate business. We've built something meaningful with our lives. And what have I built?" "Nothing," David said bluntly. "You work at a bookstore. You live in a tiny apartment. You've never been married, never had kids, never bought a house. You've basically been coasting through life while the rest of us have been working hard and making sacrifices." I nodded slowly. And you think that's why Grandma Ellie left me the money? Because I was coasting? I think she left you the money because you manipulated her, Jessica said. Because you spent more time with her than the rest of us. Because you made her feel sorry for you. Because you convinced her that you needed it more. Is that what you think happened? What else could it be? You were over there every week, Sarah, having tea, listening to her stories, playing the sweet granddaughter. Meanwhile, the rest of us were busy with our own lives, our own families, our own responsibilities. We didn't have time to sit around and butter up an old woman. Butter up? You know what I mean. You made yourself indispensable to her. You made her feel like you were the only one who cared about her. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd played as a child. Do you want to know what really happened? Do you want to know why she left me the money? Yes, Mom said quietly. I want to understand. I turned back to face them. She left me the money because she knew I would use it the way she would have used it. She knew I would care more about making a difference than making a profit. She knew I would honor her values instead of abandoning them. That's ridiculous, David said. Money is money. It doesn't matter who spends it, doesn't it? Let me ask you something, David. When you found out about the mortgage payment, what was your first thought? I was confused. I didn't understand how it had happened. But once you realized it was family money, once you suspected I might have access to significant funds, what did you think about? He was quiet for a moment. I thought about how unfair it was that you had money and I didn't. Not, thank you for paying off my mortgage. Not, how generous of Sarah to help me. Your first thought was resentment. Because it is unfair. If there's family money, it should be shared equally. Should it? Jessica, when you learned about the inheritance, what went through your mind? She shifted uncomfortably. I thought about the legal implications. I wondered if the will could be contested. You wondered if you could take it away from me. I wondered if it was legitimate. And Mom? What did you think? Mom's voice was small. I thought about how much easier things would be if we all had that kind of money. How much stress it would eliminate. So all of you immediately started thinking about what this money could do for you personally. None of you asked what I planned to do with it. None of you asked about Grandma Ellie's wishes or intentions. You just assumed it should be yours. Because we're family, Jessica said. Because that's what family does. They share. Is it? When was the last time any of you shared anything with me? When was the last time you offered to help me with rent, or groceries, or anything else? You never asked for help, David said. I never asked because I knew you'd say no. Or worse, you'd say yes and then hold it over my head forever, reminding me of my failures and my dependence. I walked back to my chair but didn't sit down. Do you want to know what Grandma Ellie really thought about this family? What she really observed during all those years you were too busy to visit her? Go ahead, Jessica said coldly. She thought you were shallow. She thought you cared more about appearances than substance. She thought you valued money over people, status over character, success over integrity. That's not true, Mom protested. Isn't it? Mom, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not because you needed something, not because there was a family event, but just to check in on your daughter? Mom was quiet. David, when was the last time you asked me about my work, my interests, my dreams? When was the last time you showed any interest in who I am as a person? We're all busy, Sarah. We have responsibilities. And Jessica, when was the last time you treated me like an equal instead of a charity case? When was the last time you spoke to me without condescension or pity? I don't. She started, then stopped. Here's what Grandma Ellie saw, I continued. She saw a family that had forgotten how to love each other. She saw children who were so focused on their own success that they'd lost sight of what really mattered. She saw people who measured worth by bank accounts and job titles instead of kindness and character. So she decided to punish us, David said bitterly. No. She decided to reward the one person who still remembered her values. The one person who visited her because she enjoyed her company, not because she felt obligated. The one person who listened to her stories, who cared about her opinions, who treated her like a person instead of an old woman taking up space. "We loved her too," Mom said, tears starting to form. "Did you? Or did you love the idea of her? The grandmother who babysat when you needed her, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries, who asked about your lives but never expected you to ask about hers?" "She never seemed to need anything," Jessica said defensively. "She needed to feel valued. She needed to feel heard. She needed to feel like her life had meaning beyond taking care of other people." "Do you know what she told me about her investing?" "She said it made her feel powerful, like she was building something important. She said it gave her a sense of purpose she'd never had before." "So why didn't she tell us about it?" "Because she was testing you. She was watching to see if any of you would love her for who she was, not what she could give you. She was waiting to see if any of you would defend me when the others mocked me. She was hoping that someone in this family would show the kind of character she could trust with her legacy." "And we failed the test," Mom said quietly. "You failed the test. Every family dinner where you let David and Jessica make fun of my choices. Every time you introduced me as your daughter who was still figuring things out. Every time you acted like my life was less valuable than theirs because I wasn't making as much money. We never meant to hurt you," Mom said. "But you did. And Grandma Ellie saw it. She saw how you treated me, how you dismissed me, how you made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family. And she decided that if you couldn't value me when I had nothing, you didn't deserve to benefit when I had everything." Jessica was furious. "This is emotional manipulation. You're trying to make us feel guilty for being successful. I'm trying to make you understand why she made the choice she made. She didn't leave me the money because she loved me more. She left me the money because she trusted me more." "Trusted you to do what?" "To use it wisely, to make a difference, to carry on her values instead of abandoning them." "And what exactly are you planning to do with it?" "I'm buying the Book Nook and turning it into a community center. I'm keeping the rental properties affordable for teachers and nonprofit workers. I'm starting a scholarship fund for students who show character and integrity, not just academic achievement." "Of course you are," David said sarcastically. "Of course you're going to waste it on bleeding heart causes instead of building something profitable." "I'm not wasting it. I'm investing it in the future Grandma Ellie believed in. A future where people matter more than profits, where communities support each other, where success is measured by the good you do, not the money you make." "That's idealistic nonsense," Jessica said. "Money is a tool. It should be used to create more money, to build wealth, to provide security for future generations." "Whose future generations? Your children? David's children? What about my future? What about the future of kids who can't afford college? Or families who can't afford decent housing? Or communities that are losing their bookstores and libraries because everything has to be profitable?" "That's not our responsibility," David said. "It was Grandma Ellie's responsibility. And now it's mine. She didn't spend 40 years building wealth so that you could buy vacation homes and luxury cars. She built it so that someone could make a real difference in the world. You're not qualified to make those kinds of decisions," Jessica said. "You don't have the education, the experience, or the business sense to manage that kind of money responsibly. According to you. But according to Grandma Ellie, I'm the only one who is qualified. I'm the only one who shares her values, her vision, her understanding of what's really important." "This is insane," David said, standing up and pacing. "You're talking about giving away millions of dollars to strangers while your own family struggles with mortgages and student loans and retirement planning." "Your mortgage is paid off, David." Grandma Ellie made sure of that. "She took care of you, even though you didn't deserve it, even though you never appreciated what she was doing for you." "What about me?" Jessica demanded. "What about my student loans? What about Mom's retirement? Are you going to help us too? Are you going to change?" "Change what?" "Change how you treat me. Change how you view success. Change your priorities from accumulation to contribution. Change from people who take to people who give." "You're holding the money hostage," she said. "You're saying we can only have it if we become different people. I'm saying you can be part of what I'm building if you want to be. But you have to want to be. You have to care about something bigger than your own comfort. And if we don't, then you'll continue to be exactly who you've always been, successful, comfortable, and empty. Just like Grandma Ellie predicted. The room fell silent. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, marking time that couldn't be recovered, marking moments that couldn't be undone. I need to go, I said finally. I have a meeting with the architect about the Book Nook renovation. Sarah, wait, Mom said. Can't we work something out? Can't we find a way to share this that makes everyone happy? Everyone is happy, Mom. You're getting exactly what you always wanted. Jessica and David are free to focus on their careers and their success without having to worry about their disappointing sister. And I'm free to build something meaningful without having to justify it to people who don't understand. What about family? She asked. What about staying together? What family? The family that mocked me at the will reading? The family that's been treating me like a failure for years? The family that's now angry because I inherited money they think they deserve more than I do? We can do better, she said. We can try to understand. Can you? Really? Or are you just saying that because you want access to the money? She started to answer, then stopped. That's what I thought. Grandma Ellie was right about all of you. She was right about what would happen when you found out about the money. She was right about what your priorities really are. I walked toward the door, then turned back. The $10 she left me? I'm framing it. Not because it's valuable, but because it represents something important. It represents the moment when someone finally saw me for who I really am, not who everyone else wanted me to be. Sarah, Jessica called as I reached the door, this isn't over. I'm going to look into this legally. I'm going to find out if this can be contested. Go ahead, I said. Grandma Ellie prepared for that possibility. She documented everything. She recorded conversations. She had psychological evaluations. She made sure that when you showed your true colors, there would be evidence of it. Recorded conversations? She knew you'd react exactly the way you're reacting now. She knew you'd be angry and resentful and grasping. She knew you'd try to take away the only thing she ever gave me. And she prepared for it. I opened the door and stepped outside. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, and I could hear children playing in a nearby yard. Normal life, continuing exactly as it always had, while my family imploded behind me. Sarah, Mom called from the doorway. Where does this leave us? I turned back one last time. It leaves you exactly where you've always been. Successful, comfortable, and convinced that you're better than me. The only difference is that now you know I don't need your approval anymore. I drove home slowly, past the familiar landmarks of my childhood, past the places where I'd grown up feeling like I didn't quite fit, didn't quite measure up, didn't quite deserve the same respect as everyone else. But those feelings were gone now, replaced by something I'd never experienced before. The quiet confidence that comes from being truly seen and valued. The Book Nook was busy when I arrived. Mrs. Chen was helping a customer find a book about gardening, and I could hear children laughing in the back corner where we kept the picture books. This was what I wanted to preserve and expand. This sense of community, this place where people came to learn and grow and connect. How did it go? Mrs. Chen asked when the customer left. About as well as expected, I said. They're angry. They feel cheated. They want to contest the will. I'm sorry, that must be difficult. It is. But it's also liberating. I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to minimize my dreams or apologize for my choices. I can just be who I am. And who are you, Sarah? I thought about that question, about the journey from this morning to this moment, about the transformation from disappointed granddaughter to keeper of a legacy. I'm Eleanor Mitchell's granddaughter, I said. And I'm going to make her proud. The architect arrived an hour later and we walked through the bookstore, discussing possibilities. A reading room with comfortable chairs and good lighting. A community meeting space that could host lectures and book clubs. A children's area with soft carpeting and low shelves. A coffee bar where people could linger and talk. It's going to be beautiful, the architect said. This could become the heart of downtown Cedar Falls. That's the idea. My grandmother believed that communities thrive when people have places to gather, to learn, to share ideas. She wanted to create something that would bring people together. As we talked, I felt her presence, her approval, her love. She'd given me more than money. She'd given me purpose, confidence, and the knowledge that I was worthy of trust and respect. The $10 bill was still in my purse, along with the brass key and her final letter. Small things that had unlocked everything. Small gestures that had changed my life forever. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a cup of tea, looking out at the lights of Cedar Falls. Tomorrow, I would start construction on the bookstore renovation. Next week, I would meet with the scholarship committee. Next month, I would visit the rental properties and make sure they were truly affordable for the people who needed them. But tonight, I just wanted to sit quietly and remember Grandma Ellie's voice, her wisdom, her love. She'd been right about so many things. She'd been right about the power of patience, about the importance of character over status, about the value of quiet generosity over loud success. Most of all, she'd been right about me. She'd seen something in me that I'd never seen in myself. The ability to make a difference, to use resources wisely, to honor a legacy while building a future. The brass key caught the light from my reading lamp, a small reminder of the doors that had opened, the possibilities that had been revealed, the trust that had been placed in me. I was no longer the family disappointment. I was no longer the granddaughter who'd inherited $10. I was Eleanor Mitchell's chosen successor, the keeper of her dreams, the guardian of her legacy. And tomorrow I would begin to show the world what that really meant. 6 months had passed since the confrontation at Mom's house, and Cedar Falls had begun to transform in ways that would have made Grandma Ellie proud. The Book Nook renovation was complete, and the grand reopening had drawn hundreds of people from across the county. What had once been a simple bookstore was now a vibrant community center, with reading rooms, meeting spaces, and a coffee bar that stayed busy from morning until evening. I stood in the main reading room, watching an elderly man help a young boy sound out words from a picture book. The literacy program had been one of our most successful initiatives, pairing senior volunteers with children who needed extra help with reading. The sight of these intergenerational connections forming over shared stories would have brought tears to Grandma Ellie's eyes. "Sarah, the scholarship committee is here for the final selection meeting," Mrs. Chen called from the front desk. She'd stayed on as co-manager, bringing her 35 years of experience to help guide our expanded mission. The scholarship program had received over 200 applications for the first 20 awards. We weren't looking for perfect grades or impressive extracurriculars. We were looking for character, for young people who showed kindness, integrity, and a genuine desire to make their communities better. The selection committee included teachers, community leaders, and several recipients of past scholarships who'd gone on to make meaningful contributions. As I walked to the meeting room, I passed the community bulletin board that had become a central gathering place. Job postings, volunteer opportunities, notices about lost pets, invitations to neighborhood potlucks, the ordinary fabric of small-town life, woven together in one place. This was what Grandma Ellie had envisioned when she'd talked about the importance of community connections. The scholarship meeting lasted 3 hours, with passionate discussions about each candidate's potential. We weren't just giving money away, we were investing in the future leaders of our community. The final recipients included a young woman who'd started a food bank at her high school, a teenage boy who'd organized neighborhood cleanup projects, and a girl who'd been tutoring younger students in math while working part-time to help support her family. "These are exactly the kinds of young people Eleanor would have chosen," said Patricia Martinez, the high school guidance counselor who served on the committee. "They understand that success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about lifting others up with you." After the meeting, I walked through downtown Cedar Falls, observing the changes that had rippled out from our initial investments. The bookstore's success had encouraged other businesses to invest in improvements. The coffee shop next door had expanded their hours and added live music nights. The hardware store had started hosting weekend workshops on home repair and gardening. The entire downtown district was more vibrant, more connected, more alive. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert Hayes, the property manager. Rent collection at 98% this month. Tenants are reporting high satisfaction with maintenance response times. The community garden at the Riverside complex is thriving. The rental properties had become a model for ethical property management. We'd invested in upgrades and maintenance while keeping rents affordable for teachers, social workers, and nonprofit employees. The waiting lists were long, but we were gradually acquiring additional properties to expand the program. Several other cities had reached out, asking for advice on implementing similar models. I'd just reached my car when I saw a familiar figure approaching from across the street. It was Mom, walking slowly, her expression uncertain. We hadn't spoken since the confrontation 6 months ago, though I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd been struggling with the family rift. "Sarah," she called out as she got closer, "could we talk? Just for a few minutes?" I looked at her, this woman who'd raised me but never quite understood me, who'd loved me but never quite accepted me. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile, as if the weight of our family's dissolution had taken a physical toll. "Of course," I said. "Would you like to come up to my apartment? Or we could sit in the bookstore." "The bookstore, please. I'd like to see what you've done with it." We walked through the renovated space, and I watched her take in the changes. The children's reading corner, where a mother was reading to her toddler. The community meeting room, where a book club was discussing their latest selection. The coffee bar where teenagers were doing homework while sipping hot chocolate. "It's beautiful," Mom said quietly. "It's exactly what Mother would have wanted." We found a quiet corner in the adult fiction section, settling into the comfortable chairs I'd chosen specifically for long reading sessions. Mom looked around at the books, the soft lighting, the people quietly browsing and reading. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," she began. "About how we treated you, about how Mother saw us. I think you were right about most of it." "Most of it? I never meant to make you feel like you didn't belong. I was proud of you, Sarah. I just didn't know how to show it. Your choices were so different from what I expected, what I thought success looked like. What made you change your mind?" Mom was quiet for a long moment. "I went to Jessica's last month for dinner. She was complaining about work, about how demanding her clients were, how she never had time for anything she actually enjoyed. Then David called while I was there, stressed about a deal that had fallen through, worried about making his next car payment even though his mortgage was paid off." She looked around the bookstore again. "And I thought about you, about how you looked that day 6 months ago. You weren't stressed, or angry, or worried about money. You were calm, purposeful, like you'd found something that made sense to you." "I found my calling," I said. "Grandma Ellie helped me understand what I was meant to do with my life. She always said you were special, different. I thought she was just being a grandmother, favoring the baby of the family. But she saw something in you that I missed." "What did you miss?" "Your contentment. Your ability to find joy in simple things. Your genuine interest in other people's lives. I was so focused on what you weren't achieving that I missed what you were accomplishing. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the old hurt of years of misunderstanding. But there was something else too, a possibility I hadn't expected. What do you want from me, Mom?" "I want to apologize. I want to understand what you're doing here. And I want to ask if there's a place for me in it." "A place for you?" "I'm retiring next month. I've been a teacher for 37 years, and I'm tired. But I'm also scared. I don't know what to do with myself if I'm not in a classroom." She gestured toward the children's section. "You mentioned literacy programs. I saw that man helping the little boy read. I wondered if you could use another volunteer." I stared at her, trying to process this unexpected development. "You want to volunteer with the literacy program? I want to be useful. I want to be part of something that matters. I want to honor Mother's memory in a way that makes sense. What about Jessica and David? How do they feel about you being here?" Mom's expression grew sad. "They're angry with me for reaching out to you. They think I'm betraying them, choosing sides in a war they think we're fighting. But I'm not choosing sides, Sarah. I'm choosing to be better than I was. It's not that simple, Mom. I can't just forget years of being dismissed and ignored because you've had a change of heart. I know. I don't expect forgiveness right away. I just want the chance to earn it. I looked at her, this woman who'd shaped my childhood but never quite understood my adulthood. The hurt was still there, along with skepticism about her motivations. But I also saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine humility. A willingness to admit she'd been wrong. The literacy program meets Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, I said finally. Patricia Martinez coordinates it. If you're serious about this, you should talk to her. I'm serious. I've been thinking about it for months. And what about the money? Are you here because you want to be part of the community work? Or because you want access to the inheritance? Mom flinched at the directness of the question. I won't lie to you, Sarah. Having more financial security would make retirement easier. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I realized that I'd lost my daughter over money that was never mine to begin with. You haven't lost me completely, I said, but rebuilding trust takes time. And it requires consistent action, not just words. I understand. I'm willing to do the work. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the life of the bookstore flow around us. A group of teenagers was clustered around the graphic novel section, debating the merits of different series. An elderly woman was asking Mrs. Chen for recommendations for her book club. A father was reading to his daughter in the children's area. This is what Mother wanted, isn't it? Mom asked. A place where people come together, where knowledge is shared, where community happens naturally. It is. She believed that the best investments weren't in stocks or bonds, but in people and relationships and the things that bring us together. She was right. She was right about a lot of things. My phone buzzed with a text from the architect. The proposal for the second bookstore location is ready for review. The city of Waterloo is very interested in replicating the Cedar Falls model. What's that about? Mom asked, noticing my smile. We're expanding. 3 other cities have asked us to help them create similar community centers. We're calling it the Eleanor Mitchell Community Foundation. You're franchising bookstores? We're sharing a model that works. Each location will be adapted to its community's specific needs, but the core concept is the same, a place where books and people and ideas come together. That's wonderful. Mother would be so proud. I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough, if I'm living up to her expectations. You're doing more than enough, Sarah. You're changing lives, creating opportunities, building the kind of community she dreamed of. That's not a small accomplishment. Over the next few weeks, I watched Mom integrate into the literacy program. She was patient with the children, encouraging without being condescending, skilled at making reading feel like play rather than work. Patricia Martinez was impressed with her natural teaching ability and her commitment to the program's goals. Your mother is gifted with the struggling readers, Patricia told me. She has this way of making them feel confident, like they can overcome any obstacle. It's exactly what our program needs. I observed Mom's interactions with the children, looking for signs of the old impatience, the old judgment. But she seemed genuinely different, more present, more focused on the children's success than on her own performance. One afternoon, I found her in the children's section with Marcus, an 8-year-old who'd been struggling with reading comprehension. They were working through a picture book about a boy who felt different from his classmates. Sometimes people don't understand us right away, Mom was saying. Sometimes they need time to see what makes us special. Like the boy in the story? Like the boy in the story. And like you. You're special, Marcus. You just learn differently than other kids, and that's okay. I watched this interaction with mixed emotions. This was the mother I'd needed as a child, the one who could see past differences to recognize individual worth. But it was also painful to see her giving to a stranger's child the understanding she'd never quite given to me. After Marcus left with his grandmother, Mom approached me. That little boy reminds me of you at that age, so bright, so curious, but always a little out of step with everyone else. You never told me that when I was 8. I know. I was so worried about you fitting in, about you being normal, that I missed what made you extraordinary. I'm sorry for that. Why are you different now? What changed? She sat down in one of the small chairs, looking almost comical in the child-sized furniture. I think I finally understood what Mother was trying to teach me. That success isn't about conforming to other people's expectations. It's about becoming the person you're meant to be. And who am I meant to be? You're meant to be exactly who you are, someone who sees possibilities where others see problems, someone who builds bridges where others build walls, someone who believes in the power of books and stories and human connection to change the world. That sounds like something Grandma Ellie would have said. She did say it, in her way, over and over for years. I just wasn't listening. The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Chen, who approached with a concerned expression. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you. He says it's about family business." I looked toward the front of the store and saw David standing near the entrance, looking uncomfortable and out of place among the books and community bulletin boards. He was wearing an expensive suit and holding a manila folder, every inch the successful businessman. "I'll handle this," I told Mom. "You don't have to be involved." "Actually, I think I should be. We're family, Sarah, that has to mean something." We walked to the front of the store together. David's expression was unreadable, but I could see tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself when he was preparing for a difficult conversation. "David," I said, "this is unexpected. I need to talk to you. Both of you, actually." He looked at Mom. "I heard you were volunteering here." "I am. It's meaningful work." "Right. Well, I have some business to discuss with Sarah." "Legal business." I felt Mom stiffen beside me. "What kind of legal business?" David opened the folder and pulled out a thick document. "I've been working with a team of lawyers for the past 6 months. We found some irregularities in Mother's will, some questions about her mental competency in her final years." "David, no," Mom said quietly. "I'm sorry, but this isn't right. $13 million going to one person while the rest of the family gets nothing? It's not fair, and it's not legal." "It's completely legal," I said calmly. "The will was properly executed, witnessed, and filed. Grandma Ellie underwent psychological evaluation to prove her competency. She documented everything. She documented what she wanted you to think she documented. But my lawyers have found evidence that she was being manipulated, that she was under undue influence during her final years." "Whose influence?" "Yours, Sarah. You were the one who spent time with her, who had access to her, who could have convinced her to change her will." I felt a familiar anger rising, the old frustration of being accused of something I hadn't done. But I also felt something else, a strength I hadn't possessed 6 months ago. "David, you're embarrassing yourself. You're also wasting your money on lawyers who are taking advantage of your desperation." "I'm not desperate. I'm fighting for what's right." "What's right, or what's profitable?" "This money should be shared equally among the family. That's what any reasonable person would expect." "And what would you do with your share?" "That's not the point." "It is the point. What would you do with $4 million, David?" He was quiet for a moment, then shrugged. "I'd invest it, build my business, provide for my family's future." "And Jessica? What would she do?" "She'd pay off her student loans, maybe buy a bigger house. Normal things that normal people do with money. And none of you would use it to help anyone else. None of you would invest in the community or support education or create affordable housing. That's not our responsibility. It was Grandma Ellie's responsibility. And she chose to pass that responsibility to me because she knew I would honor it. You're hiding behind her memory to justify keeping money that should be shared. I'm using her money to fulfill her vision. Look around you, David. Look at what's been accomplished in 6 months." He glanced around the bookstore with obvious dismissal. "You've renovated a bookstore. Congratulations. You could have done that with $100,000. I've created 20 scholarships for deserving students. I've provided affordable housing for 60 families. I've employed 15 people in meaningful work. I've created a model that's being replicated in other cities. What have you created with your success?" "I've built a business. I've provided for my family. I've been responsible." "Have you?" "Your business is struggling, David. Your marriage is strained. Your kids barely talk to you because you're always working. What kind of success is that? At least I'm not playing with charity money while my family suffers." Your family isn't suffering. Your mortgage is paid off. Your children's college funds are secure. You have everything you need to be happy. But you're not happy because you're focused on what you don't have instead of appreciating what you do have. Mom stepped forward. David, you need to stop this. You're destroying our family over money that was never yours. It should have been ours. We're her children, her grandchildren. We deserve to inherit something significant. You did inherit something significant, I said. You inherited the example of a woman who lived with integrity, who worked hard, who cared about others. You inherited the knowledge that success isn't measured by bank accounts, but by the difference you make in the world. That's philosophical nonsense. It's the truth that Grandma Ellie spent her entire life demonstrating. She could have lived like a millionaire, but she chose to live modestly so she could invest in the future. She could have spoiled all of us with gifts and vacations, but she chose to teach us the value of hard work. She could have divided her money equally among us, but she chose to trust it to the person who would use it wisely. You're not using it wisely. You're giving it away to strangers. I'm investing it in the community she loved. I'm creating opportunities for people who need them. I'm building something that will last long after I'm gone. And what about us? What about your family? You're my family, David. You always will be. But being family doesn't mean you're entitled to inherit money you didn't earn. It means you're entitled to love and support and forgiveness, all of which I'm willing to give if you're willing to receive them. I don't want your forgiveness. I want my fair share of the inheritance. Then you're going to be disappointed, because there is no fair share. There's only what Grandma Ellie wanted, what she planned for, what she trusted me to do. David looked at the legal documents in his hands, then at Mom, then at me. This isn't over, Sarah. My lawyers are confident we can prove undue influence. Your lawyers are wrong. But even if they weren't, do you really want to destroy our family over money? Do you really want to spend years in court, fighting over the estate of a woman who wanted nothing more than for us to love each other? She should have thought of that before she played favorites. She didn't play favorites. She made a choice based on character, based on values, based on who she trusted to carry on her legacy. If you can't understand that, then you're proving she made the right choice. David put the papers back in the folder. I'll be in touch, he said, then walked out of the bookstore without another word. Mom and I stood in silence for a moment, watching him through the window as he got into his expensive car and drove away. I'm sorry, Mom said finally. I'm sorry he's doing this to you. He's not doing it to me. He's doing it to himself. He's choosing bitterness over gratitude, resentment over acceptance. That's his choice to make. Will his lawyers be able to cause problems? They'll try. But Margaret Chen prepared for this possibility. Every document is in order, every procedure was followed correctly. David is going to spend a lot of money to discover that Grandma Ellie was smarter than he gave her credit for. What about Jessica? Is she part of this lawsuit? Probably. They've been talking to each other, coordinating their strategy. But it doesn't matter. The money is legally mine, and I'm going to continue using it the way Grandma Ellie intended. I'm proud of you, Mom said, for how you're handling this, for what you're building here. Mother would be proud too. I hope so. Sometimes I miss her so much it hurts. I wish she could see what we've accomplished. She can see it. And she's smiling. The lawsuit dragged on for 8 months, generating hundreds of pages of legal documents and thousands of dollars in attorney fees. David and Jessica hired an expensive firm from Des Moines, convinced that they could prove I had manipulated Grandma Ellie into changing her will. They subpoenaed bank records, medical records, and financial documents. They interviewed neighbors, friends, and family members. They even hired a private investigator to look into my relationship with Grandma Ellie. But Margaret Chen had prepared for exactly this scenario. Every meeting with Grandma Ellie had been documented. Every decision had been witnessed. Every change to the will had been accompanied by psychological evaluations, proving her competency. The recorded conversations that revealed my family's true attitudes toward me became crucial evidence, demonstrating that Grandma Ellie's decision was based on careful observation of our characters. The case was ultimately dismissed with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled. The judge's ruling was particularly harsh, criticizing David and Jessica for their frivolous and emotionally motivated lawsuit and ordering them to pay my legal fees. But the victory felt hollow. The lawsuit had accomplished exactly what Grandma Ellie had feared. It had torn our family apart, probably permanently. David and Jessica stopped speaking to me entirely. They also stopped speaking to Mom, angry that she'd refused to support their legal challenge. "I've lost my children," Mom told me one afternoon as we sorted books in the children's section. "They're so angry about the money, about me supporting you, about everything. They act like I betrayed them. You didn't betray them. You chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. But they're my children. How do I live with this?" The same way Grandma Ellie lived with it. She knew that choosing integrity sometimes means choosing loneliness. She knew that doing the right thing isn't always popular. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? I think they'll forgive you when they're ready to forgive themselves. When they're ready to admit that their anger isn't really about money, it's about realizing that they weren't the people they thought they were. The community center continued to thrive despite the family drama. The scholarship program had expanded to include vocational training for adults who wanted to change careers. The affordable housing program had grown to include 3 additional properties. The literacy program had become a model for other communities across the state. But perhaps the most meaningful development was the relationship I'd built with Mom. Working together on the literacy program, we'd discovered a connection that had been missing throughout my childhood. She'd found purpose in retirement, and I'd found the mother I'd always needed. "I understand now why Mother chose you," she told me one evening as we locked up the bookstore. "You have her gift for seeing potential in people, for believing in possibilities that others miss. I learned it from both of you. From her wisdom and your compassion. I wasn't very compassionate when you were growing up. You were trying to protect me. You were worried about my future, about whether I'd be able to take care of myself. You couldn't have known that Grandma Ellie was already taking care of that. She was taking care of all of us, wasn't she? In her own way, she was. Even David and Jessica, even though they can't see it. She paid off his mortgage. She helped with Jessica's career connections. She made sure we all had what we needed to be successful. But she gave you something different. She gave me the chance to be useful, to make a difference, to prove that quiet people can accomplish extraordinary things. And you have. You've built something beautiful here, something that honors her memory perfectly." As we walked home together, I thought about the journey from that morning in the lawyer's office to this moment. The $10 inheritance that had seemed like an insult had been the key to everything. The mockery and dismissal that had hurt so much had been the catalyst for transformation. I still had the $10 bill, framed and hanging in my office at the bookstore. Not as a reminder of family cruelty, but as a symbol of unexpected gifts, of the way small things can unlock enormous possibilities. Grandma Ellie had been right about so many things. She'd been right about the power of patience, about the importance of character over status, about the value of quiet generosity over loud success. She'd been right about my family's reaction to the money, about their priorities, about their capacity for change. Most of all, she'd been right about me. She'd seen something in me that I'd never seen in myself. The ability to make a difference, to use resources wisely, to honor a legacy while building a future. The Eleanor Mitchell Community Foundation now operated in 7 cities, providing scholarships, affordable housing, and community gathering spaces. The model was being studied by urban planners and social workers as an example of how private philanthropy could address public needs. But the real measure of success wasn't in the numbers or the recognition. It was in the 8-year-old who'd learned to read with help from our literacy program. It was in the young teacher who could afford to rent an apartment in our housing program. It was in the teenager who'd received a scholarship and gone on to study social work. It was in the quiet transformation of communities, one book at a time, one family at a time, one generation at a time. That was Grandma Ellie's real gift to me, not just the money, but the understanding that wealth is only meaningful when it's used to create more wealth for others. Not financial wealth, but the wealth of opportunity, of hope, of human connection. The brass key was still on my keychain, a daily reminder of the doors that had opened, the possibilities that had been revealed, the trust that had been placed in me. I was no longer the family disappointment. I was no longer the granddaughter who'd inherited $10. I was Eleanor Mitchell's chosen successor, the keeper of her dreams, the guardian of her legacy. And every day, I was proving that her faith in me had been justified. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.